It wasn't always pretty, but the Eagles get the job done again. They go to 2-0, winning the home opener against the Minnesota Vikings. Rachel, they're the only team in the NFL that can say that they're 2-0 right now. These late night pods are always better when we're celebrating a victory instead of wallowing in defeat. So the Eagles defeat the Vikings 34-28. We're here to break down the game for those of you that are still awake with us. Those of you that are listening to this later, sad you're not here with us in the comments, but certainly understand the late night game. Rachel, how are you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling good that it was a win. The start of this game was not very pretty. I was definitely a little frustrated with Brian Johnson, Jalen Hurts. I was kind of like, what's going on? But I feel like, once they were able to lean on the, run game, that opened up things for them. And then it was kind of like that was a wrap. It's crazy that this was a huge game for DeAndre Swift. Really excited to see him being able to get, some touches after last week. We hardly saw him, but I mean, overall, win is a win, and they got this one done. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a rough first half, or I guess not the whole first half, but
Yes, first quarter
yeah,
mainly.
first quarter. I mean, so the Eagles are down 7-3, and then in the last 2 minutes or the last 3 minutes of the second quarter, they score a touchdown and a field goal, and then they come out in the first 4 minutes of the third quarter. They score two more touchdowns. So really broke the game open. It doesn't feel like it was such a compacted time because it was split by halftime, but really about 7 minutes, the Eagles put up 24 points, 24 of their 34 points. And yeah, the beginning of the game, it just felt like the Eagles offense was all out of sorts. I felt like the Eagles were trying to spread the defense out to make it a little more evident where the pressure was coming from. Brian Flores is a pretty pressure happy guy, and they were blitzing early in the game, and it seemed to be working. And I really don't know why they went away from it. I thought the Eagles' response to get a little more condensed and try to run the ball to mitigate that pressure was good. But down the stretch, you saw them routinely dropping 8 into coverage, only rushing 3. And I really didn't understand that approach from the Vikings, but it let the Eagles' passing game get going a little bit. We still haven't seen Jalen Hurts in the passing game on their A game, maybe not even on their B game so far. That interception that he threw over the middle of the field was pretty bad. But Jalen Hurts does end 18 of 23 for 193 yards. He throws one touchdown, one interception. He took 4 sacks. And then, of course, he had 12 carries for 35 yards with 2 touchdowns that he stole from the man of the hour, DeAndre Swift. I was glad DeAndre Swift got his touchdown there at the end because both times I thought he was in the end zone. And, of course, they showed the replay, and it was the correct spot. He was down at the goal line, and then they let Hurts QB sneak it in. So I was feeling a little bad for DeAndre Swift. I was glad he got the touchdown to cap his 175-yard rushing performance.
Yeah, and this was definitely a milestone for him. There were so many tweets that were going on. I think that I had one pulled up with him. They said that, after last week, he only got that one carry. He, like you said, he finished with 28 carries today, and they said it's the 5th 100-yard game of his career. And so, what were the Eagles doing last week? Like, I mean, it just sucks that they had to go through the first week of seeing how, just not using him in order to get here. And now it's like, okay, this works. So now we know that this is definitely our running back one. And it's kind of just like, let's stick to this. But I did want to touch on like the passing game. We leaned heavily on the run game today, didn't see too much. We saw AJ Brown getting a little bit frustrated on the sideline. They panned to like Nick Sirianni. It was a clip with the 3 of them, Hurts and AJ Brown. AJ Brown definitely looked a little frustrated. He didn't really get involved too much. We saw Dallas Goedert get more involved than last week. And of course, Devontae Smith had 2 touchdowns. And so that was nice to see. But what are your overall thoughts on the pass game? The run game was strong once they leaned on it, but the pass game, it wasn't really there.
Yeah, the passing game has been a struggle. Week 1, I thought Jalen Hurts had a really bad game. I don't think he had such a bad game today. The interception was bad. I'm willing to let that go a little bit because of the down and distance. It was like 3rd and 16. You were out of field goal range, but near midfield. It's one of those things where like that ball was never going to get there, but trying to fit it in there probably only cost you like 10 or 15 yards of field position on the punt that was going to happen anyways. So not excusing it. I do think he locked on to Devonta Smith on that one pre-snap, which isn't ideal. But outside of that, he had a couple good balls to Devonta Smith, the touchdown, the opening drive when he underthrew. But it's hard to call it an underthrow because the thing traveled like 60 yards in the air. You would like to get it out a little quicker. That one could have been 6 if he got it out there, but I'm not sure that Josh Allen might be the only guy in the league that could have put that one on the money downfield. So he had the nice one to Devonta Smith that he stepped up into pressure and took a big hit to deliver. He had the 2 to AJ Brown, both of which came back on penalties that they were both beautiful passes. So hopefully Hurts will continue to hit his stride. I thought he looked better today than he did week 1, but he's still nowhere near, the Hurts that we saw in the Super Bowl.
Do you think that gets chalked up to the fact that we didn't see him in the preseason? Like, or do you think it's kind of just like week 2, still early, we need to calm down? We think he's going to get back to the Jalen Hurts that we saw last season.
Yeah, I think he will get there. There's a combination probably of lack of reps, not much time to get, on a short week, there's not really time to get in a film room, get a lot of reps on the practice field and sort of get back into that rhythm. And you're still dealing with a new play caller and things. I mean, it's funny. I tweeted out during the game, the defense lost a lot of players and is missing a lot of players to injury. And the offense really didn't lose much of anybody. Isaac Seumalo and Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell out with injury. And the offense was struggling and the defense looked incredible. And I think Sean Desai is doing a good job. Now, they give up some plays down the stretch, and there's only so much you can expect when you're missing 2 of your 3 starting corners, you're missing a starting safety, a starting linebacker. Like, injuries are mounting for the Eagles. It's nice that they will get this mini bye to sort of get right. But on the defensive side of the ball, I really like what I'm seeing from the Georgia boys in the middle. And I'm totally blanking on the name now. Who's the defensive tackle? Jalen Carter. There's
Carter.
Both of their names start with J's.
Yeah, Jordan Davis. Yeah,
Jalen Carter gets a lot of the press, but Jordan Davis is playing really good football right now. And actually, he is the leader on the Eagles for sacks so far this season with a sack and a half. So he got a half a sack last week. He got a sack tonight. He got a tackle for loss. The one play where Kirk Cousins tripped. Kirk Cousins didn't just trip. Jalen Carter instantly pushed the guard back into Kirk Cousins' feet. So those guys are looking really good in the middle. Josh Sweat's looking good. Hassan Reddick's a guy we haven't noticed a whole lot. I'm curious to go back and watch the film on this one. And I wonder if he was dropping into coverage more because he certainly wasn't making a lot of an impact as a pass rusher. But that's one of the nice things. Your passing game's off a little bit. Your defense and your running game can step up. The Eagles are such a talented team that when it does all click at the same time, the team's going to be nearly unstoppable.
Yeah, the fact that you just mentioned Hassan Reddick, and I was kind of just like, oh, yeah, I haven't been seeing too much of him either. That's actually crazy. It's still early, but one of the biggest plays of the night defensively for me when we were coming out of halftime, I think that was coming out of halftime. And it, like you said, it was Josh Sweat and it was Fletcher Cox. They sacked Kirk Cousins and they forced that turnover. I think that was like their 4th turnover of the game. And so, like you said, that's definitely the strength of the team right now. But also, let's talk about Jake Elliott, special teams. He's definitely been one of the stars, in addition to like Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis definitely being stars of this team so far. We've been seeing a lot from Jake Elliott just coming in clutch. He did miss a field goal, but other than that, like definitely milestones for him as well.
Yeah, on the Hassan Reddick thing, Hassan Reddick recorded no tackles tonight.
Oh,
he had 1 tackle in week 1. So through 2 games, he's got 1 tackle to his name.
Okay, it's early. It's okay.
Yeah, but Jake Elliott, he misses the 55-yarder, which is no chip shot, and then he hits the 61-yarder. And just to point out, the last time Jake Elliott hit a 61-yard field goal, the Eagles won the Super Bowl. In fact, the Eagles have never not won the Super Bowl when Jake Elliott hits a 61-yard field goal. So go ahead and buy your Super Bowl tickets. Jake Elliott has spoken, and he's going to will the Eagles to the Super Bowl this year. That's kind of where I'm at. So, it's crazy to me that Like if you told me before this game that the Vikings would turn the ball over 4 times, I would assume that Kirk Cousins kind of had a meltdown.
Mhm.
Kirk Cousins, 31 of 43, 364 yards with 4 touchdowns, and there were 4 fumbles. And Cousins had one, Madison had one, and then 2 receivers had one. And the Justin Jefferson one was really a turning point for the game. And I, I hate the rule about fumbling out of the end zone being a touchback.
Yes.
I think that's absurd. If you fumble, and I mean, we're watching the replay. If that ball was fumbled 6 inches earlier, they get the ball at the goal line. But because it's not, they lose possession. I think it's such a bad rule, but definitely impacts the Eagles in a massive positive way here. If that doesn't happen, if that ball goes out of bounds at the half-yard line, the Vikings probably punch that in, and they take a 14-10 lead into halftime, and it could be a whole different ball game. But instead, the Eagles take those points off the board. They answer with a field goal. Then, of course, they get the strip sack on the opening drive and score another touchdown, and it's off to the races. And the Vikings made it close at the end, and I was sweating out the onside kick. And then I'm just sitting there because we all know special teams is my bit on this show. And I'm just sitting there thinking, Aaron Sipos is going to drop this punt. I mean, he almost dropped one last week. All you have to do is punt the ball and the game's over. And thankfully, I didn't have to come on here and complain about that. But you start to sweat just even the smallest, most routine things when you're a one-score game like that at the end.
Absolutely. I like this comment right here. It just says tonight was a general step in the right direction, but still far from where we can and should be. Absolutely. I mean, there's different new components to this Eagles team. Sean Desai, Brian Johnson. Do you think that people are calling for Brian Johnson to be fired already?
Yes.
I haven't taken a look at our 3 words. I know when I was skimming throughout the game, he was getting ripped. Absolutely. Do you think, like, what are your thoughts on him so far? Are we being too hard on him because it's so early, or like what's up?
From live tweeting the game, I can guarantee you that
Yeah.
people are calling for Brian Johnson to be fired. It's really nuanced because Hurts isn't playing his best football, and if Hurts was playing his best football, no one's talking about Brian Johnson because the offense is still humming. Not to go back to last week, but Hurts missed several shots that he could have got big plays and even touchdowns, and then people aren't thinking about it. You get the drops or the penalties on the AJ Brown touchdowns and that slight underthrow that I don't know if we're calling a 60 air yards pass an underthrow, but that could have been a touchdown for Devonta Smith. And so it's a lot of little things, but I don't like how they've handled the Hurts running game. That's my biggest qualm with the offense so far. I mean, you look at what the Patriots were doing. They were crashing down on the mesh point, looping a linebacker behind to clean up Hurts. The Vikings were doing the same thing. And at one point, Jalen Hurts had like 8 carries for 12 yards or something like that. And that's not counting those QB sneaks. It was before that. Meanwhile, DeAndre Swift was averaging at the time 6 yards a carry. And it just didn't make sense to me that with A.J. Brown, with Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, with the game that DeAndre Swift was having, that you're still calling QB draws and you're calling options. Like, I fully support limiting Hurts's hits and the contact he's taking. The best way to do that is to stop calling those QB runs or call them very sparingly and just put the ball in the belly of the back. Just let DeAndre Swift, let your offensive line pave the way. That's my biggest qualm, I think. I did take exception at their play calling on that opening drive. It really felt like they hit the big play to Devonta Smith, and then they were just like, okay, let's play for a field goal. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like that at all, but I think those are little things. I think situational things need to improve with Brian Johnson, but this is also the second game he's ever called plays. So I'm still optimistic on that. And I think the offense will start to be fleshed out a little bit more. It's still been a little vanilla in some aspects. I think that'll come with time. There's, like I said, same thing with Jalen Hurts. There's not a lot of time for Brian Johnson to hit the film room and work on those things in practice off of a short week. So I would expect coming off the mini bye for the offense to look differently.
Yeah, at least they do have this little mini bye. Our next game is not until Monday, September 25th. That game is against the Bucks. And so they definitely have some things that they need to address during this time off. But I did Somebody has a question. If you want to take this one, it says, "And why did they not go for two after the last touchdown?"
Yeah, I don't know. Analytically, you should go for two in that situation. So they were up 12. They kicked the extra point to go up 13. Going for two, like there's no difference in 12 and 13, unless you're counting on them to miss an extra point. You should go for two in that situation to try to get it to 14. I don't know why they didn't do that. Maybe they just think that game is over. And I mean, it would take a lot of circumstances for that game not to be over. They're going to have to score and recover an onside kick and score again. And maybe you just don't want to tip a 2-point conversion play. Maybe they just weren't thinking about it. But analytically speaking, you should definitely go for two in that moment.
I wanted to touch on the one of the biggest storylines going into this game was Darius Slay and Justin Jefferson. We saw him on him pretty early, but then towards the end of the game, we saw a little bit of Josh Jobe on Justin Jefferson. So, do you think that the matchup that everybody was gassing lived up to the hype? He didn't shut him down like he did, last season when they played. And so, what did you see?
Yeah, that very first play the Vikings had, Slay looked kind of slow on that crossing route. He kind of got tripped up trying to chase Jefferson. He created a lot of separation. Of course, the very next play they went to that screen pass and Slay came downhill and hit him at the line of scrimmage. And I thought they had a pretty good battle. Jefferson got a lot of catches tonight, 11 for 159 yards.
Yep.
I wouldn't say that he got the better of Slay. He got a lot of passes that were kind of those quick underneath passes that you're giving up and rallying and tackling. He had a big reception with Jobe on him, but it was a fun one to watch. And Victor and I talked about on the EPA podcast, how do you handle James Bradbury being out and Reed Blankenship being out? Are you going to put Slay on Jefferson and try to push coverage Josh Jobe's direction? Or maybe you put Josh Jobe on Justin Jefferson and you push the help that way and you isolate Slay on Jordan Addison. And it was interesting to see kind of how that played out. I was glad that the secondary was able to at least hold on. There were some pretty big miscommunications in the secondary as the game wore on. Of course, you're not expecting to see Keely Ringo and Josh Jobe and Mario Goodrich and all these guys in at the same time. That's not ideal. And so that one touchdown that I think the broadcast pointed it out where the receiver was just wide open in the top corner of the end zone. That was a miscommunication on a crosser. And I'm pretty sure that was on Josh Jobe. Won't know for sure unless he just says, yeah, that was me. Yeah. But hopefully that's the things that we can see cleaned up over the, 12 days till the next game?
That's what yeah, I think so. Right? Yeah. Something like that. But there's
something like that. Don't try to do math live on podcast.
I can't. It's too late for that. There's another question here before we go and take a look at some of the 3-word reactions. Is the offensive coordinator bad? We kind of touched on this a little bit. I wanted to kind of segue into like the O-line as well, but we kind of touched on this one a little bit. If you wanted to kind of repeat what we said.
Yeah, I don't think it's time to like pull the fire alarm and be panicked about Brian Johnson. I think he's settling in the same way that Hurts is settling in. There's some things that he's done that I think are questionable so far schematically, and some of his play calling, some things I don't like. I fully expect that to kind of get back on track though. So I think, it's only the second game he's called at the NFL level. He didn't really call plays much at the collegiate level either. So play calling is a new thing for him. Like the design is going to be fine. You've got it's Nick Sirianni's offense, but there's a rhythm to calling plays, and Shane Steichen was so good at pushing those buttons and sequencing plays. I don't expect Brian Johnson to be that good, but I think he'll be fine.
And we kind of touched on Hurts a little bit as well. But we're going to go and take a look at some of these 3-word reactions. They are definitely flooding in. And so some of the ones first one I see, bad offensive coordinator. So there it is. We knew that one was coming. Little bit better. Swift is running back 1. Relax. It's September. Do you feel like we're, we're overreacting too much? Yeah, I think so. Right?
I mean, yeah, it's all you can do off the small.
We got 2 wins. It's just there are some concerns. It's okay. Let's get healthy. That's a huge one. You already touched on the injuries today, but definitely concerning on top of the injuries that we saw last week. And so definitely one of the ones we're stressing is we got to get healthy. And at least we have this little mini bye, like you were talking about earlier, injuries piling up. I need a drink. Okay. It was kind of stressful at the end a little bit. So many injuries, run the ball. What else? What else? What else? Run the ball.
There's a good one right there. 2-0. That's
Okay. There it
the
is.
3 words that I need right there. It's 2-0.
Bad situational play calling. Defense is sus. Okay. Sloppy but good. Pretty rough start. Okay. And it looks like Victor's here, so let's bring him in, see what his thoughts are.
What's
What's up,
going on,
Victor?
yo?
How are you feeling after we got the win? It wasn't pretty, you know.
Hey,
There was some good. There was a very slow start for the Birds, but what did you see?
might be the ugliest 2-0 start I've ever seen in my lifetime. That might be what this is, but yeah, a lot of teams aren't going to be able to say they're 2-0 after this weekend. I guess
That reminds me. So that makes me think of Pirates of the Caribbean when the guy tells Jack Sparrow, he says, you're the worst pirate I've ever heard of. And he says, but you have heard of me. Might be the worst 2-0 start, the sloppiest 2-0 start we've ever seen, but it is a 2-0 start.
yeah,
I'm a big fan of that.
I'm trying to go into it optimistically. I'm going to say that if the Eagles are able to win by playing this sloppy, then I think it should be scary to the rest of the league that when they do eventually iron out the kinks, which I do anticipate, that they're going to be steamrolling over teams. It's not like that there were mistakes like, like throughout this game. Like they built a big lead, and of course they let the Vikings come back. But I think when you don't have the personnel to do, there's no N'Kobe Dean, there's no Reed Blankenship, there's no James Bradbury. You lose Quez Watkins at some point in the game. You lose. There was another injury of you lose Avonte Maddox, which isn't shocking. Which isn't shocking to anybody. Losing Avonte Maddox, I'm sure the team is well equipped to cover up Avonte Maddox at this point. But I think some players stepped up when they had to. Slay did his very best on Justin Jefferson, had him in check for most of the game until the end there. But I like what I see from this team. Hurts looks, I don't want to say he looks unsure of himself. He looks like he's lacking confidence, if I had to put it like in the best way. Like he looks like he's lacking confidence. He certainly didn't look like this in training camp. So I don't know what's going on with him right now. Like of course he made some nice plays. But in the running game, he looks indecisive. He looks like he's still trying to figure things out. And this could still be, like we said last week on the post game, this could be trying to find continuity with Brian Johnson. I'm not sure what it is, but this doesn't look like the confident Jalen Hurts that we saw last week. And the Eagles are so good, especially defensively, that they can cover that up. But eventually they're going to be playing good teams, especially November, December, when you're playing teams like the Seahawks and the Chiefs and the Bills. Their teams you're not going to be able to make mistakes against those teams. For now, it's working, but they're going to have to figure it out down the stretch here if they certainly want to, win, at least come out of that stretch 3-3 in that winter stretch, because that's not going to be an easy run.
Yeah, that's one of the things we even talked about when the schedule first came out. It's nice to have this ramp up period. Patriots, Vikings, at the Bucks versus the Commanders, at the Rams, before you get into more difficult opponents, the Jets, which maybe not now, but the Dolphins.
Then you I don't consider the Jets as scary anymore, man.
Well, that defense is still scary, but then you get into, like you said, that November stretch: Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, 49ers, Cowboys, Seahawks, and we'll find out real fast what the Eagles are made of when we get there. But it's nice to have that little ramp up. You don't want to be playing the Bills and the Cowboys and the Chiefs week 1. So it's nice that that's a little later in the season.
Yeah, we'll take it. Did Gainwell, I don't know if you guys touched on this, did Gainwell lose his job tonight? Did he lose it to DeAndre Swift, Shane, do you think? Or is he
better
still
have. If I have to watch another 15-touch Kenny Gainwell game, I'm going to scream. Like, yeah. It's just, like, I thought Kenny Gainwell was fine last week. It is night and day different watching DeAndre. And I'm not just talking about the yardage, because that can be based on the defense you're playing and how well the offensive line plays and all that. But the vision that DeAndre Swift has. And, there were several times plays called inside, nothing's there, and he cut it outside. I think Kenny Gainwell's just running into the back of the offensive line and getting a yard there. And there were several plays like that. He had a sick cut on that touchdown run of his. He's just night and day better than Kenny Gainwell. It's not even close.
Yeah, well, Rashad Penny did that run into the offensive line trick a couple of times. So this might be the end of Rashad Penny. If you were going to impress anybody, today would be the game. But the fact that we saw Boston Scott a handful of times before Gainwell was ever in the game, I think that tells you what the team thinks about Rashad Penny at the moment. Maybe you were right, Shane. You were saying in weeks leading up to this that maybe he just doesn't have any juice left, and the Eagles are just trying to figure out what to do with him. And that looks to be the case. I didn't see a ton of juice from him tonight, but I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of DeAndre Swift moving forward. The fact that he had 2 touches last week is criminal after what you saw what he did tonight. I'm sure Sirianni's going to learn from his mistakes and make sure that Swift gets his touches, and whatever infatuation they have with Gainwell, they can put it on the back burner and say Swift is our guy right now. He's getting 5-6 yards a carry, and until a defense can stop it, this is what we're going to do. But I'm quite stunned that in the second consecutive game, especially on primetime, Jalen Hurts didn't hit, at least 40 rushing yards. I don't know if this is by design or if they're going to keep him bubble wrapped because he's worth a lot of money now. But it's quite shocking that Hurts isn't taking off and running as much as we're accustomed to. Sirianni spent all summer saying that we didn't pay him or to do less, but that certainly looks like that's the case right now.
Still early.
Yeah.
I had asked Shane earlier what his thoughts were on when they panned to the sideline and we saw a little bit of frustration from AJ Brown. Nick Sirianni was kind of like had his arm out, looked like he was kind of not really holding him back, but in a way he had his arm out. And so, Victor, what are your thoughts on what we saw between AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, when I first saw it, I thought he was yelling at Smitty. Like when I had first caught a glimpse of it, and I was like, he's not yelling at Devontae, is he? There's no way. But throughout the summer, I was wondering if is AJ Brown going to be a little more comfortable this year with demanding the ball? Like in your first year, you're trying to play it nice. You're trying to be like, okay, hey, it's my first year in Philly. I'll play nice. But now that he's here, and of course he's paid, and it's his second year here, is he going to be more demanding this season if it's not going his way? And even with the team up, we saw glimpses of it in the playoffs last year when they were pounding on the Giants, and there was no reason for him to really be complaining. And now you're seeing it here when they were up again. I hate to throw the word diva around because I don't think AJ is that. I think he knows how good he is, and he thinks that he can impact the game, and he wants to show the team that he's worth that, and he wants to make an impact. And any player that's making that kind of money and knows how good he is wants to be able to provide for their team, and he just felt like he wasn't in that moment. So I'm going to chalk it up to frustration. I know how close he and Hurts is. I don't think there's any animosity there. But the optics aren't great. And so you definitely don't, of course, all the rival fan bases are going to get a hold of it and spin their narratives and say that, that there's dividing locker room. And you're going to have to choose between Hurts and Smitty. We already were starting to get that from the reporters about picking sides and all this. And this is not going to do that argument any service. But I think it was just frustration. He knows how good he is. Like I said, he wants to impact the team in a positive way. He felt like he wasn't in that moment. And he just wanted to I'm going to say he wanted to do more for his team. And he just felt like he wasn't in that moment. And he was frustrated. I don't think he dislikes anybody. I'll say that. I don't think he's mad at anybody. I think he's just frustrated with himself. And he's trying to tell Hurts, like, look, man, like, get me involved. And Hurts is trying to tell him, like, I got you. Just hold on a second.
Right. I think that's what it was, too. Like you said, they are best friends at the end of the day. And so I think this is a situation where it was in the moment. I think they're going to be perfectly fine after this.
I will say what can't happen, though, is you can't let AJ bully you into changing the offense. They were running the ball. It was working. Immediately after that, they're forcing the ball to AJ, essentially. And yes, there were 2 touchdowns, essentially 2 touchdowns that were called back. One was a pass interference that wasn't called. The other was the penalty that called it back. But you don't let AJ Brown bully you into changing the offense. Do what works. Deal with AJ later. Don't let him come in here and say, "Give me the ball," and then just do what he says. I don't think that's the way to go either. That's at least what it looked like to me, anyway.
Yeah. One other one that was a bad game management is, and this is a lot on Hurts, but when the Eagles were up by 13 with the ball kind of on the edge of field goal, and you got the holding penalty, so now you're like 2nd and 20, and then Hurts takes a sack, and then on 3rd down, it's like I don't remember what it was, like 3rd and 23 or something like that, and Hurts took another sack, and then all of a sudden you're out of field goal range, and you can't make it a 16-point game
you
anymore.
can't. He's too smart to be doing that. You cannot.
Which technically, I mean, 16 points is still 2 possessions, but it requires 2 2-point conversions. It's really hard. Just on third, now Hurts should never take that sack, but on third down, they just need to call a run. Just call the run, get a few yards, make it a little easier field goal. You cannot get sacked out of field goal range, especially on a play 3rd and 23 where you were never going to convert that anyways.
Yeah, just do a draw, hand it off. That usually the running back draw is the go-to on 3rd and 20 plus. Usually just do that, get whatever positive yards you can, kick the field goal. Taking a sack, trying to do too much. Again, I think Brian Johnson is in his own head at times. But Brian Flores is a good defensive coordinator. He brought the heat on that play. Hurts didn't have any time to react. He just got down before the play got worse. And you live to see another down. But it's tough in that situation. If they didn't have the lead that they did, it could have been an even more pivotal play than it was. But these are learning mistakes that Jalen Hurts, I'm sure, will learn from. I'm sure he's going to look over these last 2 weeks. It was a short week, not really time for many adjustments. I expect the offense, at least the defense I'm impressed with, I expect the offense to make several changes before they play Tampa Bay next Monday night. It's going to be so long before we see them play again. But next Monday night, when you're playing against Baker Mayfield and whoever else is over there, I expect them to steamroll by them. And if it's another struggle and you're only beating them by a score, it's time to tweak something. I think they'll take this 10-day hiatus to heal up, figure out what's not working on offense. Hurts will put in all the time in the film room and be better for it. I was shocked he threw a pick. I wasn't expecting to see his first interception until a month down the road. He's usually good. You have a fumble in your first game, a pick that I don't really know what he was looking at. We'll have to look at the film and see what was going on. But that pick was ugly, and we're not used to Hurts seeing that. That was 2021-esque Jalen Hurts that we were seeing there. And I just think he's not confident right now for whatever reason. I think that's something he and Brian Johnson will have to work on moving forward.
Yeah. Last guy I'll shout out, and I hesitate to do so because he did kind of get burned at the
Justin
end. Justin
Evans.
Oh, no, that's not
Justin Evans.
No, I was going to say Josh Jobe. I thought Josh Jobe acquitted himself really well tonight. He gave the long touchdown. I think he was expecting safety help on the inside there, and it wasn't there. Now, that said, you got to bring the guy down and not give up the long touchdown. And then you had the miscommunication in the end zone where he didn't follow the crosser. And so, he gives up 2 touchdowns on 2 plays there, but snap in and snap out. I thought he actually played really well, primarily on Jordan Addison tonight. Addison was a first-round pick, and Jobe was a UDFA a year ago. So shout out to Josh Jobe. I feel a little better now, at least about outside corner. Should Darius Slay or James Bradbury need to miss another game, I feel good putting Josh Jobe out there.
Yeah. I was never too overly concerned about outside corner. I said as long as Slay keeps Justin Jefferson in check, I think Jobe will be able to handle his own against Jordan Addison. We did speak this week about how Jordan Addison's a first-round rookie. Jobe is an undrafted guy. It's a tough task regardless. But you don't want to my concern was, what if Jefferson starts cooking Slay a little bit, and then what do? You don't have the luxury of throwing Bradbury over there. You don't want to throw Josh Jobe into the deepest of deep ends and have him cover freaking Justin Jefferson in his first start. But Slay did his job. We all knew Jefferson was going to get his. Luckily, it wasn't. I don't want to say it wasn't game altering, but it wasn't like game breaking like the stuff he was doing. Thankfully, it's not like he was taking over the game a bit at the end, but the game was far too gone at that point. But Jobe was able to do what he could with Jordan Addison, and I like where the secondary is at. I'm impressed with the safeties, especially I brought up Justin Evans because I was not a fan of his coming off last week, and he did a lot for me this week, so I'm a little more confident. And if Reed Blankenship misses any additional time, Terrell Edmonds made some plays too. So safety isn't as a disaster as I thought it was, and we still didn't have to see a ton of Sidney Brown. Once you see Sidney Brown on the field, that's when okay, we're in trouble at safety, because it seems like they don't want to rush him onto the field for whatever reason. So until we see him, they're okay at safety, I guess.
You know who else they didn't want to get on the field until they had to? DeAndre Swift. Gave him 2 touches last week. So sometimes coaches just make bad decisions. But you talk about receivers being frustrated. Justin Jefferson, 150 yards last week and his team loses. 159 yards tonight and his team loses.
Yep.
I'd rather take the 30 yards AJ Brown had and get the W.
Yeah,
but
he's the Ohtani of the NFL right now, doing all you can and just lose. Like he doesn't play both ways. He doesn't play both ways, obviously, but he's He's doing everything he can. How he have damn near 300 yards in your first 2 games and you're 0-2. Yeah, I'd be frustrating. And they held off contract negotiations until next offseason. I'm walking right into there next summer with these box scores and saying, hey, we're not losing because of me. So pay me, figure out the quarterback situation, because you didn't draft a quarterback, number one. You didn't trade for Trey Lance, hometown guy at that, when he was available. I don't know what your plan is at quarterback, but Kirk obviously isn't the answer. So figure out the QB position, but make sure I get paid, because I'm the one putting up 1,500 yards a season and being 9-8 because of it. So figure it out.
One thing, and this is probably more for a preview of next week, but assuming Bradbury comes back, if Maddox is going to miss time, I wonder if, given how well Job played tonight, if they would stick Bradbury in the slot.
Yeah, that was my thought.
Starting 3 instead of putting Goodrich out there. I don't know what they'll do, but that's something to maybe file away for next time. So that's going to about wrap it up here for our recap show. Victor, Rachel, do either of you guys have any last thoughts that you need to throw out there before we get out of here?
You had just when you had just said that about Bradbury. My one point is I was strongly considering, or I thought the Eagles should have considered rather, moving Edmund, like with the way linebacker was looking. And I know Cunningham had a good game today, so we can breathe a little bit there. But I was like, at this point, man, just put Terrell Edmonds at linebacker. Like, at this point, this is what we're gonna have to do. Put Edmonds at linebacker, have Justin Evans, and Sidney Brown at safety, and see what you can do. Terrell Edmonds has always been like a box kind of safety when he was in Pittsburgh. He doesn't have great sideline to sideline speed anymore. I don't think he's the most athletic guy. I think that you could put him at linebacker and try and make it work. But Zach Cunningham showed me some things today, so I'm glad that he's not entirely cooked like I thought he was last week. I'm glad Justin Evans can hold his own at safety. He had some nice breakups at the end of the game as well. So we don't have to sound off the alarms just yet. Still some things to be concerned about. But 2-0 is 2-0, so we'll take it.
2-0 is 2-0, and the Birds are the only team in the NFL that is currently 2-0. So we will take that.
For the Eagles, not to cut you off. This is the first time they've been 2-0 in consecutive seasons since I was born in 1993. So take that for what it is.
That's great. Also,
yes, I'm almost 30. Yes, I'm almost 30.
You missed earlier is the Eagles have never not won the Super Bowl when Jake Elliott hits a 61-yard field goal. So the Eagles are 2-0. Jake Elliott says they're going to win the Super Bowl, and they get a long week now, the mini bye, to get healthy, to get in the film room, to iron out some of the issues that we've all seen over the first 2 weeks before that Monday night game in Tampa Bay at the Buccaneers. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of the BGN Instant Reaction Show. The Eagles beat the Vikings at whatever the score was, 34-27. I'm tired. It's late. Thank you guys for joining. Smash that subscribe button here on YouTube if you're watching live. We'll be live after every game to break down the game, to interact with you guys. So drop your comments. Always look for Rachel's 3 words posts. Those of you that are on Twitter, maybe listening later, we like to get you guys involved in the show too. So keep it tuned here to the BGN radio feed. We'll have lots of content coming your way over the next week and a half. We'll have some extra time to breathe.
Yeah, this time.
To get organized, to grind some extra film, and we'll have you guys covered with everything you need to know about this game, and we'll get you ready for the Bucks game. So
instead of doing recaps and previews the next day, Jesus.
Yeah, it was a little much. From the BGN crew, we'll catch you guys next time. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
2-0.